So today I'm going to be reviewing yet another Netflix original which is available on, well, Netflix obviously. Today I am reviewing The Fundamentals of Caring. So this movie was originally released back in 2016. It is based on the 2012 novel entitled The Revised Fundamentals of Caring, written by Jonathan Evison. So our main character, Ben, played by Paul Rudd, is a retired novelist turned caregiver. So Ben is sent to care for a special needs teenager, Trevor, who is portrayed by Craig Roberts. So Ben has absolutely no experience with caregiving, and Trevor happens to be his very first client. In fact, he becomes the caregiver after a tragic accident involving the death of his own son. Trevor suffers from DMD, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a disease that seriously affects the muscles in the body and vastly restricts mobility, which means most males who suffer from DMD tend to be bound by wheelchair, as they tend to be paralyzed from the waist down. And in Trevor's case, even some of his hand movements are very restrictive. Trevor has a very twisted and dark sense of humor, but as we get to know this character, we discover just how endearing he really is, and there's a lot of charm to his personality, to say the least. The constant practical jokes Trevor plays on Ben throughout this movie are some of the highlights of this movie. They are absolutely hysterical. The total comedic timing in this is just spot on. It's fantastic. The movie really kicks off when Ben takes Trevor outside the house for the first time in probably forever. After a very humorous yet disappointing trip to see a very large stuffed cow, Trevor decides he wants to turn this small trip into a full-on road trip, as he wants to seek out his estranged father. His father, who abandoned Trevor when he was just 3 years old, just right after his diagnosis, which is pretty low. It's a pretty crappy thing to do to a kid going through a physical disability. Along the way, they meet Dot, played by Selena Gomez, and a pregnant woman called Peaches, who they find stranded at the side of a highway after her car breaks down. So my take from this entire movie is it seems that everything that occurs in this entire movie is one giant metaphor for kindness and caring for others and compassion, and what it all truly means to be caring and to be compassionate for others. And it manages to do this in a very simple, very relatable way, not at all overly preachy or anything like that. It's just so genuine. I do really love the relationships between the characters in this movie. It gradually evolves in a very organic way. They all clearly have very different types of personalities, but they meld so well together. It just somehow just works really well. Of course, let's not forget, this movie is actually based on a novel, so it clearly already has a very rich story. Trevor and Ben, they really play off each other so well, especially with the practical jokes, and it does get flipped around at least once in the movie, which is just perfect. Eventually, Trevor and Dot start to become very close, although I'm not going to tell you just how close. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Do watch the movie. It is definitely worth a watch, so I'm not going to spoil that aspect. But what I will say is this entire road trip really allows these characters to really get to know themselves, if anything, in a really big way. But what I will say is that all of these characters along this road trip, they really get to explore themselves, and they get to explore things about themselves that they may not have realized before this trip. So they discover a lot about themselves throughout their journey. So The Fundamentals of Caring is a very feel-good movie, although there are a lot of sort of sad and upsetting moments in this movie, but it does have a lot of comedy in it as well, which is spot on. The comedy is, as I said, very well timed, very cleverly written. So unlike a lot of Hollywood bro comedies, it doesn't rely on cliches and over-the-top sort of tropes that we so often see in big Hollywood blockbusters. This is just very, very smart writing. Story seems to be very well paced. I don't at all get the impression that the story is any way rushed or that there's like missing pieces and unanswered questions or anything like that. Everything just seems to fall into place. I like all of the characters in this movie. They are very likable. They are very relatable. No cliches here. At least from my interpretation, I don't think any of the characters are a cliche. This movie does a great job of teaching us about human compassion, and by having human compassion and caring for others, we actually get to learn so much of ourselves. So I really do recommend checking out The Fundamentals of Caring, which is obviously available on Netflix. I really enjoyed this movie. I can't really speak on how true it is to the novel, as I've not personally read it, but as a piece of film, it is really good. It is really enjoyable. It is just a very simple movie with a very mostly simple story. But the portrayal itself of this story is very well done. It's very entertaining. It is very funny. It is very touching. It is very emotional. It very much will make you think about a lot of things in life. In terms of an indie drama comedy, this is one of the better ones you can watch, but not even just as an indie movie, just as a movie in general. It is a very entertaining piece of film, and I very, very much recommend that you check it out. If I was to rate this movie, honestly, I would give this 5 out of 5. I simply could not fault it at all. That's my honest opinion. Maybe you've watched this and you felt otherwise, and if you have, please feel free post a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this movie if you have seen it. But if you have any suggestions for other indie movies you suggest that I watch and review, please let me know down below in the comments as well. And until next time, everyone, don't forget, nerds rule the world.